The name Stonehenge is thought to come from the Old English or Saxon word Stanhengen, which means stone hanging, because it kind of resembles what gallows looked like in the Middle Ages. You had two uprights with a crossbeam.
For centuries, Stonehenge has been treated as an unsolvable mystery. But that may no longer be true. Using chemical fingerprints locked inside the stones themselves, scientists have traced where Stonehenge came from, how it was built, and what it was designed to do. And the results dismantle some of the most popular theories completely. Because once you understand what these stones were really measuring and how far they were moved, Stonehenge stops looking like a monument and starts looking like a machine. But the biggest discovery doesn't answer how it was built. It forces us to ask something far more unsettling. Once the glacier theory collapsed, archaeologists were left with a harder truth. If ice didn't move the stones, people did. And not just one stone. Further analysis revealed that the Newell boulder wasn't alone. Fragments buried across Stonehenge shared the same chemical fingerprint, all tracing back to the same Welsh landscape. Some of these stones weighed over 3 tons. This wasn't an accident, it was a coordinated operation. Archaeologists now know that around 3000 BCE, Neolithic communities were actively quarrying stone at Crag Rossi Felin. Tool marks carved into the rock face matched the same stone types found at Stonehenge. This wasn't scavenging, it was extraction. And there's something even more unsettling. Evidence suggests some of these blue stones may have stood in an earlier monument in Wales, long before Stonehenge existed. That means they weren't just moved for convenience. They were taken apart, transported over land and water, and rebuilt hundreds of miles away. Why move sacred stones instead of using local rock? Nearby settlements had plenty of material, but Stonehenge's builders ignored it. Most Neolithic circles were built from what was close. Stonehenge was different. Every major stone was brought from somewhere else. That kind of effort demands planning, leadership, shared belief. It also demands time, possibly generations. And once archaeologists accepted that people could move stones across Britain, another long-standing assumption fell apart. If Neolithic builders could move 3-ton blue stones from Wales, what stopped them from moving stones even farther? Because one of Stonehenge's most important stones didn't come from Wales at all. It came from much farther north. Moving stones from Wales was already hard to accept, but Stonehenge doesn't stop there. At the center of the monument lies a slab known as the altar stone. For years, its origin was unclear. Then new geological work narrowed it down to a region in northeastern Scotland. That's nearly 470 miles away. There is no gentle way to explain this. Transporting a multi-ton stone across that distance without wheels, metal tools, or written plans is an extraordinary feat. And yet the evidence points in one direction. The stone's mineral structure does not match southern Britain. It does not match Wales. It matches rock found far to the north. This discovery changes the scale of Stonehenge overnight. If Neolithic builders could organize the movement of stone across the length of Britain, then Stonehenge was not a local project, it was a national one. That raises another problem. Stones that massive don't move without reason. This wasn't decoration, this wasn't convenience. Anthropologists point out that long-distance transport in prehistoric societies often signals political unity.
A shared identity, a statement of power. Recent DNA studies support this idea. Around the time Stonehenge was expanded, Britain experienced large-scale migration, with new populations mixing with older ones. Stonehenge may have stood at the center of that transition, not just as a monument, but as a message.
So it seems that Stonehenge is accurately built to highlight the longest and the shortest days of the year.
It opens up the idea that there might have been multiple different purposes for Stonehenge throughout the years.
But even this doesn't explain the strangest detail. Because once the stones arrived, they weren't placed randomly. They were shaped, measured, locked together with a precision that shouldn't exist at this time. And that precision points to something far more ambitious than transport. It points to design. Stonehenge looks rough from a distance, but up close it tells a different story. The massive sarsen stones were not stacked or balanced by chance. They were engineered. Each upright stone was shaped with mortise and tenon joints, the same technique later used in advanced woodworking. The horizontal lintels were locked into place so tightly that many have survived thousands of years of wind, frost, and ground movement. This alone is startling, but the real precision appears when the stones are viewed together. The lintels form a perfect visual circle, subtly curved to match the human eye. That means the builders didn't just move stones, they planned the final image. Laser surveys conducted by modern archaeologists show consistent spacing and alignment across the monument. This wasn't trial and error, it was executed from a shared plan. And that plan required measurement. Researchers now believe Stonehenge's builders used a standard unit of length, repeated again and again across the site. The same spacing appears in nearby monuments, suggesting a system taught and passed down. This level of planning changes how we see Neolithic society. These weren't isolated tribes acting on impulse. They were coordinated communities capable of long-term construction, possibly over several generations. Which leads to a deeper question. You don't need this level of precision for a shrine. You don't need it for a burial ground. You need it when accuracy matters. Because when archaeologists mapped the stones against the horizon, they noticed something else. Something that only works if everything is placed just right. The stones weren't just arranged beautifully. They were aligned to track time itself. For generations, people assumed Stonehenge marked the solstice and stopped there. One sunrise, one sunset, a symbolic gesture. But recent research suggests something far more precise. According to Professor Timothy Darville of Bournemouth University, the largest stones at Stonehenge weren't placed just to honor the sun. They were arranged to count days. Darville's analysis, published in the journal Antiquity, proposes that the 30 stones of the sarsen circle represented a complete month. Each upright stone marked a single day. The circle closed the loop. 12 cycles of 30 stones created a 360-day year. That leaves 5 days unaccounted for, and those days weren't forgotten. At the center of Stonehenge stands the Trilithon Horseshoe, 5 massive stone structures arranged from smallest to largest. These stones may have represented the final 5 extra days of the solar year, days set apart, days that mattered. Even more striking, 4 outlying stones, known as the station stones, form a rectangle around the monument. Darville argues they allowed the builders to adjust the calendar every 4 years, keeping it aligned with the sun.
In other words, a leap year system. This isn't casual observation. This is timekeeping built into stone. For a farming society, controlling the calendar meant controlling planting, harvests, festivals, and rituals. It meant controlling life itself. But there's a problem. If Stonehenge was only meant to be seen, why does it work just as powerfully when it's heard? Because once scientists began studying sound at Stonehenge, they uncovered something no one expected. The stones don't just track time, they shape experience. Stonehenge was never silent. That became clear when acoustics engineers at the University of Salford asked a strange question. What if the stones were placed not just to be seen, but to be heard? To find out, researchers built a precise 1:12 scale replica known as Minihenge using laser scans of the monument as it stood around 2500 BCE. Every missing stone was restored, every curve recreated. Then they tested it. Inside the circle, sound behaved differently. Voices carried farther, drums became deeper, noise from the outside faded away. Measurements showed the stones amplified sound by over 4 decibels without creating echoes. Spoken words and music stayed inside the circle, while the world beyond it fell quiet. This wasn't accidental. The stones acted like a boundary, not just of space, but of experience. Those inside heard everything. Those outside heard almost nothing. Anthropologists recognize this pattern. Across cultures, controlled sound is used to shape ritual and authority. Chanting, rhythm, repetition, these can induce trance-like states, heightened emotion, and bind groups together. Some of Stonehenge's blue stones add another layer. When struck, they produce a ringing tone, almost metallic. Experiments have shown they can be played like a crude instrument. This suggests ceremonies were not just watched, they were felt. Light, sound, movement, time. Stonehenge may have been designed to overwhelm the senses of a chosen few, while the rest stood outside, watching from silence. But sound and sun were only part of the story, because there's another body in the sky that moves far less predictably, and Stonehenge appears to have been waiting for it. The sun is easy to follow. It rises, it sets, it returns every year. The moon is different. Its path across the sky slowly shifts over nearly 19 years. This rare cycle is known as a major lunar standstill, a moment when the moon rises and sets at its most extreme points on the horizon. Tracking this cycle requires patience, precision, and memory that lasts longer than a single lifetime. Now, researchers from Oxford, Leicester, and Bournemouth universities working with English heritage believe Stonehenge may have been designed to do exactly that. The clue lies in 4 stones known as the station stones. Only 2 remain standing today, but together they once formed a large rectangle around the monument. When mapped against the horizon, their positions appear to align with the moon's most extreme rising and setting points during a lunar standstill. This isn't guesswork.
With a new standstill approaching, scientists are now using modern instruments to observe how moonlight moves through the stones, watching shadows, angles, and alignments exactly as Neolithic builders once would have. Why does this matter? Because lunar standstills were often linked to death, rebirth, and ancestry in ancient cultures. Early phases of Stonehenge were used as a cremation cemetery, with burials placed where the moon reaches its southern extreme. That suggests Stonehenge wasn't just measuring time, it was marking cosmic cycles of life and death. But here's the unsettling part. If the builders planned for events that happened once every 19 years, they were building not for themselves, but for the future. Which raises a final question. If Stonehenge was meant to last forever, why has it been under attack for centuries? Stonehenge was built to endure, but survival was never guaranteed. For centuries, people dismantled it piece by piece. Stones were dragged away for buildings. Fragments were chipped off as souvenirs. At times, the monument was treated as a quarry, not a treasure. In modern times, the threats became louder. Proposals for roads and tunnels cut through the surrounding landscape. Protests reached the stones themselves. Paint was thrown. Debates erupted over who truly owns the site, historians, governments, or the public. And yet, Stonehenge still stands. That persistence raises an uncomfortable truth. Every generation believes it has finally solved the mystery, and every generation is later proven incomplete. We now know the stones were moved by human hands, We know they were shaped with precision. We know they tracked the sun, the moon, sound, and time itself. But none of that explains why all of it mattered at once. Stonehenge wasn't just a calendar. It wasn't just a temple. It wasn't just a graveyard. It was all of them, layered across centuries. Each generation added meaning without erasing the past. Each belief was built on top of another, like sediment turning into stone. That may be why the monument feels unfinished, because Stonehenge was never meant to give one answer. It was meant to outlast the question. And as scientists continue to measure, scan, and test what remains, one possibility becomes harder to ignore. What if Stonehenge's greatest secret isn't what it was built for, but why it still demands to be understood? And that is where the mystery truly begins.